it's kind of designed to be confusing for people because realistically, the airlines and the hotels, they don't want you being able to maximize the rewards, unfortunately.
Hey there, points people! You just heard a clip from Lee Huffman from Bald Thoughts. Lee is a travel expert who has been sharing tips on how to travel more, spend less, and live better since 2012. He is a full time freelance writer, travel blogger, and soccer dad. And it's his mission to encourage dads to travel solo with their kids to create lifelong memories and also give the moms some alone time. In this episode, expect to hear about the best cashback cards for families, when it might make sense to look into cashback instead of points cards, some amazing credit cards that you rarely hear about on major blogs and channels, and so much more. If you are in the market for a new card to earn points so that you can travel like we, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And if you're not sure what card is right for you, I offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. And if you're looking for help with how to redeem your points, submit a request for a free personalized tutorial on geobreezetravel.com/request. We pick one of these requests to prepare for free every week, and we post it in the GeoBreeze Travel newsletter. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking. Hey Lee, welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast.
How's it going? It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here and to talk about whether for the average family, like not the crazy people like us, but for the average person, does it make more sense to do some more cashback or some more points strategies when they are trying to plan out their card strategy and their vacations? But before we jump into all of that, tell us a little bit about you and how did you get into the game of points and miles?
Sure. My name's Lee Huffman. I live here in Nashville. Been travel hacking for more than a decade. Launched my website, baldthoughts.com in December 2012. And yeah, I've been just started off with my wife and I were dating, and we used the Southwest Companion Pass and SPG miles. Pour some out for the homies that remember that. And we traveled. I mean, that was like how we dated as we were, trying to figure out whether or not we want to make it serious and long term and everything else. And rather than going to steak dinners and movies and those type of things, we would use the companion pass to travel all over the US. Basically, kind of formed a really great foundation for our relationship as far as it's easy to, when you date somebody, to see how they are when you go to the movies or dinner or those type of things. But when you have the unexpected happen when you're traveling, the real personality of somebody stands out. And we basically developed a great love for each other. And here we are a bunch of years later with kids and all the other memories that we've accumulated over all these trips and everything we've taken. And yeah, it's been a wild journey and it's been really great.
Yeah, for anybody who's dating somebody, do not get engaged to that person until you've gone on a vacation with them and something goes wrong. You don't have to manufacture something going wrong, but
How they go into certain situations. And I mean, maybe you really like to go on international trips. And other people, they're like, no, I'm fine with staying home. And so, like my wife, she really wanted to go to Paris, and we had all this times of you using the Southwest Companion Pass, and everything was great there. But when she wanted to go to Paris, I said, "Well, baby, like Southwest doesn't fly to Paris," and that really kind of opened things up as far as me figuring out, okay, how do I need to learn, and what type of miles and points do I need to earn in order to be able to make that trip happen versus paying $10,000 for us to be able to do the flights and the hotels and all the other good stuff you're going to be doing over the course of a week or two.
how does the credit card and points strategy kind of change if you are just a couple versus once you have kids? How did your strategy kind of evolve?
I will say this, like if you're somebody that's starting to have kids or going to have kids or they're really young, we maximize the heck out of it when before our kids turn 2, because especially here in the United States, they get to fly for free. And so we were going, we still traveled and continue to make all those memories and everything happen. But once they reach 2, it's a whole nother ballgame because now you got to make sure there's award availability for 3 people. or there's that extra cost of those extra tickets. And that was a kind of a game changer for us. But we've still made travel a priority with our kids. But it is harder, like kind of back to the topic of the discussion. Sometimes it's harder to find award availability for three people versus only two, especially if you go on planes, if you're trying to do like us and do business class or first class. And one, you don't want your kids stranded three rows behind you, and then also some configurations are 222 or 121, and trying to fit everybody together makes it a little bit harder when you're traveling with three versus just the two of you.
For sure. When you started branching out into doing all of this award space for families, did you just dive straight into points cards? Do you still mix in cash back? How do you kind of navigate that decision?
I try to use the miles and points as much as possible, especially all the bonus categories and the welcome bonuses for new cards and those types of things. But I'm planning a trip right now for us for a soccer experience that I'm doing with my kids in Madrid, and man, some of the miles and points costs are just out of this world. And sometimes it makes sense to be able to just use cash to be able to buy a ticket because you can find really great deals. A lot of our friends, like our friend Spencer and some of these other, you know, like email lists that offer great deals, they really focus on the cash fares versus on the miles and points side of things. And so finding great deals, especially like airfares or mistake fares, makes it so much more affordable when you're trying to travel with a family.
Have you found that most of your flights lately have been on good cash deals rather than good points deals?
It's been a little bit of a mix, but I try to focus on the miles and points as much as possible, just because it is a really great way to leverage your spending, and it is a great way to find some just incredible deals. Because I'm here in Nashville, and we're like a secondary airport, and so it's a little bit harder to find great deals originating here. But if you're somebody like me that doesn't live in a big airport, you can find great deals like $39, $49 flights from here to say Atlanta or here to Chicago, and then that way you can position, yourself to be able to take advantage of those great deals from bigger airports.
For sure. So, for a family who's just starting out, where they're like, how many kids do you guys have right now?
We have 2, and that's
Okay.
it. We're no more.
Okay. For a family who's like, okay, we're a family of four, we've got two kids, we're just getting started with points and miles. Do you recommend that they start with points and miles? Or do you recommend, like, oh, maybe find some cheap cash fares, like learn the ins and outs of Google Flights first and then just focus on cash back? Where would you recommend the average American family of four with 2.4 kids and 1.6 dogs start out?
Yeah, and the white picket fence. It's getting harder and harder to be able to plan ahead because a few years ago, it was great. There's pretty defined award charts where you say, "Okay, I'm gonna need to save up 100,000 miles, to be able to book this flight and pay a little bit of cash for the taxes and fees, and everything's great." But now that so many airlines and hotels have moved to dynamic pricing, where the price changes sometimes even by the day, it gets harder and harder to be able to know, okay, how many miles and points do I need to be able to book this trip? And so I still recommend trying to use the miles and points as much as possible because you can find some really great deals. But having flexible points, say like Chase Ultimate Rewards or American Express membership rewards, those type of points, having them that can be used both ways, whether you use them to book a flight as if it was cash, or even just literally redeem it for cash and deposit it into your bank account, or being able to transfer them to their different the airline or hotel partners. To be able to have that flexibility is key when you're trying to compare. Okay, is it a cash price better, or is it miles and points better when I'm trying to book that trip?
What's your back of the napkin math for, is it better to do this as a cash booking or as a points booking?
I mean, for airline miles, I mean, you're generally looking at like 2 cents because if you can't get at least 2 cents on the miles and points, then you're better off just using a 2% cashback credit card anyways, right? It's a little bit harder on the hotel side because, if you think of like a Hyatt versus Hilton or a Marriott or IHG, the value of their points are there's such a wide disparity between them, and it's really harder to compare them. And when you're spending on, say, the Hyatt card, for example, you're only getting 1x points if you're not using their bonus categories. But like with the Marriott card, you're getting, I think it's three as a baseline. And so trying to figure out what to spend and everything is a little more complicated that way. And honestly, it's kind of designed to be confusing for people because realistically, the airlines and the hotels, they don't want you being able to maximize the rewards, unfortunately. And so it's you have to listen to people like Julia and you follow people like me to be able to understand the rules of the game so that way you can come out ahead.
For people who are like, all right, yeah, points and miles are just really complicated. I'm going to start with the cash side of things. What are some good cashback cards that you would recommend? And is there a way to game this like there is with points, or is it strictly just get the cards with the highest sign up bonuses and get the cards that earn the most points per dollar?
Sure. What I always tell people, like sign-up bonuses are nice. I mean, obviously, it's a good way to get a couple $100, $500 worth of value, pretty quickly. But a lot of times you're going to earn even more value if you focus on getting the cards that correspond to the way that you spend. And so you're looking at, okay, what are my biggest spending categories? And just you don't have to know the exact dollar. Just know, okay, we spend a lot of money on groceries. We got a teenage boy and a girl that's not too far behind him, and we're spending a lot of money on dining because we're constantly running around between all the different soccer fields and games and all their activities. And we're spending a lot of money on groceries because they're growing, and we're spending a lot of money on gas because we're driving all over Tennessee. And so by knowing the categories that you spend the most, you can find cards that match based on those. One of the cards I really like is the Bank of America customized cash card because it actually just based on where you spend the most. And so you're not stuck with just one bonus category that may or may not correspond to the way that you spend right now. You can adjust it based on where you're spending. And then you can kind of pick the category to say, okay, you know what, this month we're going to spend a lot on this because we whatever your plans are, you can then pick the category. But a lot of people, you're busy with your job, you're busy with kids, you're busy with their school and homework and everything else. You don't want to have to worry about bonus categories. So in that case, a card, say like the City Double Cash.
With the Bank of America card, I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about that one because they don't do affiliate links, so nobody talks about them.
Yeah.
But do you have to pre-pick your categories? Like, this is gonna be our gas card, or does it just automatically give you bonus points on whatever you spend the most on? And how many points do you earn?
You actually have to choose your category ahead of time. And I think there's like 8 different categories, something like that. And so it's pretty wide variety. And that one you earn 3% cash back. What I really love, and this is why the Bank of America card gets my vote, is that if you have a bank accounts with Bank of America or investment accounts with Bank of America or Merrill Lynch, you actually can qualify for something called preferred rewards where you can earn up to 75% more rewards on your purchases based on your overall relationship with the bank. And so if you have good sized balances, you're rewarded that much more. And so that 3% category can really be, I think is what is it, 75% on that? Like five and a quarter. That's pretty tremendous. And it's hard to kind of find a card that's going to give you 5x points on your spending at that type of level. So if you have good relationships, good balances between your bank account and investments, that is a great one because actually that I will say this for many different cards. Like, say maybe this one isn't like your ideal choice because you don't like it. There are other cards within that kind of that Bank of America portfolio that also offer those same preferred rewards and those additional bonuses. And so you're going to get anywhere from 25 to 75% more rewards, whether it's points or cash back based on your relationship with the bank. That's a huge if you have those type of balances.
Mention again, what was the balance required to do that?
Yeah, so 20,000 is like the first tier, 20 to 50 is for gold, and then I mean, a million is like the highest category, but generally I think if you get 100,000 or more is the platinum, and then you'll get you can probably kind of get like the top tier rewards that way. If you have at least 20,000, then you can qualify for a 25% bump on your rewards that you're earning. So that's pretty nice.
So this is with Bank of America, where if you are banking with them in your checking or savings account and you're keeping this much cash with them, they will increase the amount of cash back that you get on your Bank of America card. That's how that works?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's checking or savings or like CDs. So interest rates been pretty high recently. So it's a bummer if you're carrying a balance in your card, but it's great if you want to lock in some of those higher rates for a CD and get some interest income. That's a great way to do it right there. Also, Bank of America, you remember during the financial crisis a decade ago, they bought Merrill Lynch, and so if you have your investment balances with them, those also count as well.
Ooh, that's very interesting that the investment balances would count because 'cause I'm like, "Don't keep $1,000,000 liquid in any account." I'm like, "I don't care how much cash back you're getting, just don't do
Absolutely.
it." But, yeah, if it counts with your investment income, that could be pretty good.
Yeah.
Alright, outside of Bank of America, what are some other products that people might wanna look at?
Yeah, so the Citi Double Cash card is pretty fantastic. It's kind of an old school cashback card that has really high rates. That one, it gives you 2% cash back, but it's a little caveat, right? So you earn 1% when you spend, and then you earn another 1% as you pay down the balance. It's great for people who pay off their card on a regular basis so that we can earn that full 2%. But what's also really nice is that the cash back is actually earned as thank you rewards or thank you points. And so you can redeem those points for travel. It does have a limited availability if you don't have any other city cards where you can transfer to a couple different other partners. So that's really nice. It doesn't unlock the full like what is it like 15 to 20 partners that they have, but there's I think three that you have access to. It's kind of like a baby step into the world of transferring points because there's other cards like the Chase Freedom Unlimited or the Chase Freedom Flex that earn think Chase Ultimate rewards, which are really fantastic points. There's a lot of flexibility there, but in order to be able to unlock the transfer to their partners, you need another card that you're paying an annual fee for it. So that's one of the great advantages of that City Double Cash card is that you don't need it to pair it with somebody else to be able to unlock at least like a limited number of transfer partners.
But if you do have the City Strata Premier, then you get access to all of the different City transfer partners.
Yeah, you just got to combine your points.
Another card that works like that, the City Custom Cash, where that one it's kind of like the corollary of the Chase Freedom Flex,
Mhm.
where you get, like, 5 points per dollar on certain categories. Is that how that one works?
Yeah, I believe so.
And so if you wanted to make that one just a dedicated gas card or something, I think it'll give you 5x on your top spend category every month. So that one's pretty good if you're like, I don't have a good card that's like good for this specific thing. Maybe look into the City Custom Cash. And then you mentioned Chase Freedom Flex and Chase Freedom Unlimited. Are those ones that you would recommend as well? Because that one would earn 5 points per dollar on special rotating categories every month for the Freedom Flex or 1.5x everywhere for the Chase Freedom Unlimited. Is that
Mhm.
something you'd recommend?
Yeah, those are great cards because they kind of get you into that ecosphere of the Chase Ultimate Rewards. And so as you learn about miles and points and you try to figure out, okay, I'm ready to dip my toe into paying an annual fee and unlocking some of these other transfer partners, they're earning those points, even though it is cash back. They're earning the ultimate rewards points, which you can then combine with the rewards that you earn from some of the other cards and be able to unlock those transfer partners and unlock being able to get bonuses when you book travel through Chase. So they're great cards. The difficulty with some of these cards is based on your level of spending. Say like the Chase Freedom Flex, although it earns the 5%, that one you have to manually activate the bonuses and you don't really get to choose. They're chosen for you, essentially. They do offer a calendar ahead of time so you can know what's coming down the pipe. But if your spending doesn't align with those bonus categories, the card has kind of a limited usefulness as far as that goes, right? So that one is a little tough, but also your spending is capped. So say even if even if it is a category that you spend a lot of money in, you're limited to that 5% cash back on the first 1,500 that you spend each quarter. Again, depending upon how much you spend and everything else, that you may be tapped out. And then next thing you know, you're spending, say, 5,000 and only the first 1,500 earn that 5%. The other 3,500 we're only earning 1%. And so you don't want that nasty surprise. You're expecting to earn all these points and miles. Next thing you're only earning 1%.
Why would somebody go for something like the Chase Freedom Unlimited when they could just go for something like the Capital One Venture, which has an annual fee of $95, but you get 2 points per dollar on everything, versus with the Chase Freedom Unlimited, you get 1.5, and to use those for transfer partners, you're gonna need to pay $95 anyway to get the Chase Sapphire Preferred. Why would somebody go with that strategy versus Capital One Venture?
Actually, there's a couple different things. One, Chase has certain application rules. I mean, pretty much all the banks have application rules nowadays. And so, depending upon how many cards you may have opened recently or other inquiries that are going on in your account, you may or may not even be able to apply for a Chase card, right? So, that's a caveat there. Also, Capital One has their pretty restrictive rules. Like, I think you can only open one card every 6 months. And so, depending upon where you are in your journey, you may or may not have availability to even open up these different cards. But when you're thinking of transfer partners and you're thinking of all the different relationships that these banks have with airlines and hotels, part of it is knowing which airlines and hotels that you favor. And so, because Chase has a very distinct difference of portfolio of brands they partner with versus Capital One. And so, if you like Hyatt, if you get the Capital One points, get one of their cards and you're earning their miles, you're not gonna be able to transfer those rewards over to Hyatt. Yeah, sure, you can book a Hyatt with the Venture Miles, and you can use your miles to be able to offset that cost, but you're not gonna be able to transfer into Hyatt and be able to redeem points for a luxurious, stay without paying whatever the current cash rate is to be able to do and then redeem the points that way. The Venture card is great because it does earn that flat 2x miles on every purchase. Like you said, you have the $95 annual fee that you have to worry about. So again, it's like thinking of how much you're actually spending and am I going to earn enough to offset that annual fee? Because they have a no annual fee version called the Venture One. It only earns 1.25 point on miles for every dollar that you spend, but it doesn't have an annual fee. And it can transfer the miles to any of their partners without paying an annual fee. So that's a really nice feature. And again, some people are hesitant about paying an annual fee when they're first starting out. They're like, I'm not really sure if this is worth it for me. Maybe it's just better off paying cash. So even though you're earning less rewards that way, you're better off starting that way and until you kind of see the value and say, okay, this is something I can see value in, and it's worthwhile for me to be able to pay that annual fee because yeah, I'm going to earn more rewards. I'm going to get unlock access to additional benefits, and so based on that, then it is worthwhile paying the annual fee. But when you're first starting out, maybe a little skeptical, maybe a little unsure of how to do it, and you're not really ready to pay that annual fee yet because you're not really justifying the cost. And so it's good to know that there are options out there where you can do it without paying an annual fee.
Are you familiar with the Robinhood card at all?
Yeah, I wrote a review a few months ago. It's been a little while, so the details are a little foggy on it. But from what I recall, it's good in a sense if you have an investment account with them already, and it does unlock some additional benefits as far as higher earnings on rewards and those type of things. But from what I recall, there were some caveats with the card that made it where it was good primarily if you're already in that ecosphere with Robinhood, but if you're somebody that doesn't have an investment account, don't plan to open up an investment account with them, that it had kind of limited benefits as far as that goes.
All right, so I thought the Robinhood card, you just get flat 3% cash back everywhere, which if you just use the cash and you're like, Capital One's good, 2x everywhere for
Yeah.
$95, like you can get a lot of value out of that. But I just want like flat 3% everywhere. I'll invest it, I'll do something else with it. You can get that with the Robinhood card, which there's no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, 3% cash back on everything, but you do have to be a Robinhood Gold member.
Mhm.
So, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I guess it's like that marketing sleight of hand. There's no annual fee, but you have to pay a subscription fee to be a Robinhood Gold member, right? It's kind of like the Costco card. There's no annual fee for the Costco card, but you have to be a Costco member in order to be able to apply for it. And overall, the card does have some good value. It's nice to be able to earn those 3%. I know in the personal finance world that I also do a lot of work with, Robinhood has a bad reputation on the as a trading platform, and so there are a lot of people that they kind of want to stay clear of that company. And so if you can kind of look past that, or if you trust them and have an account with them, it can be a really good opportunity for you to earn 3% cash back everywhere you go. Just again, remember that you're paying, although you're not paying an annual fee, you're paying to have access to that card by having a gold membership.
I'm trying to Google as we're talking, what is Robinhood Gold? And this is not intuitive at all, where it's like, you
Now,
get these benefits of 5% interest, bigger instant deposits, first 1,000 margin borrowed is interest free. And I'm like, what is any of this? Is this like founder's card where I just pay them 500 bucks a year or like what is going on? So all right, it's not as simple as you get 3% back on everything. You have to have Robinhood Gold, and whatever that means is more than like it takes me more than 5 seconds of Googling to figure out what this
yeah, it's. I remember when I wrote the article about it that it was very difficult to find on their website. And again, I don't. Anytime a website kind of hides information, makes me trust them less. And it was very difficult to find their fees Robinhood Gold. I just found it real quickly here by from another site, but it's basically $5 a month or $50 a year. So again, the annual fee isn't high, but again, like why are you hiding information?
Such a
Uh,
low fee to hide too, just be like, "It's 50 bucks."
yeah,
It's fine.
and so the whole world of miles and points sometimes is a little obscure as it is, right? And so if you can't share basic information, what else are you hiding? That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, like, super confusing too if somebody's like, "Well, how much does it cost in points?" And I'm like, "Well, that can be a really complicated answer depending on the airline you're looking at." And they're like, "Okay, Air France. I wanna go to Europe. How much does it cost in business class?" I'm like, "Well, if you're Canadian, the best case scenario is 37,500 per person one way in
Yeah.
business class. If you're US, best case scenario is 50,000, but worst case scenario is like 2,000,000 points and just avoid
Yeah.
those days."
And is there a transfer bonus happening right now? Like right now, there's while I was like researching, our tickets, there's a transfer bonus from Capital One. And yeah, here's the price, but it's not really the price because you can transfer less points because of the transfer bonus. And yeah, that world is a little challenging. And that's why you have your podcast and you have all your information. That way it helps people figure it out a little bit easier. But it is a lot to juggle. And there's a reason why a lot of people just throw their hands up in the air and say, you know what? I'm just going to pay cash. I don't want to deal with this anymore. It's too confusing. I'm frustrated. I'm looking at all these different sites, trying to figure things out. As it is, my kids are in school, then they got sports and they got homework and they have all these other things. Luckily, I work for myself and I can be at home and I can dive into this stuff. But for a lot of people who are just tired at the end of the day, cashback can be king because it's just simple. You may be paying a little bit more, but it's you can just knock it out and you can see very quickly what the actual price is and you can decide whether or not it's a good deal. And so I can understand why a lot of people don't do miles and points. But again, the more they listen to you, the easier it becomes.
I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are also a bit more advanced in their personal finance journey where they understand investments and they understand all of like what is net worth and all of that. But if somebody listening to this is like, all of this is really confusing and I'm not even sure I can like afford travel and all of that, cashback is just a lot easier than
Mhm.
points because you all have heard people on the show be like, I've done really weird, irrational things so that I can, and like, I did this weird route with the red yarn everywhere so that I could get the one Q Suites thing from Doha to wherever for an amenity kit just to say I could do it on content. Like points and miles will make people do all sorts of nonsense. So if you're already the kind of person who gets pulled into shopping nonsense and money nonsense and crypto nonsense or like whatever financial nonsense, sort that out first and use something that's got good cash back before you're like, oh, let's add another layer of
Yeah.
nonsense when I can't even figure out if all of my bills are being paid and what's my bank account this month. I don't know. If you're that person, I'm surprised you've made it this far into the podcast.
The other thing is this is that life happens, right? And maybe your trip falls through that you couldn't get the time off from work, or maybe your kid got sick or whatever, all these different things happen. And you have to put off the trip. Having flexible points or cash back allows you to then divert that money to something else, right? And so that's one of the big advantages of cashback cards and flexible points cards is having that ability to pivot based on whatever life throws at you. That way you can still maybe do something here locally or do a road trip instead of flying all the way to Europe or Asia or wherever you're planning on going. Having that availability to pivot and to change it up, the cash is something that's king as far as that goes.
Yeah, we've said so many times on this podcast, put real money before fake money. That is points and miles. Points and miles are fun. I
Yeah.
obviously love points, but you're like, well, I don't really know if we can afford these soccer lessons anymore, but we should definitely go for like this weird business class to Hong Kong. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how we prioritize everything, but up to everybody there. But as far as everything that you've mentioned so far, you've dropped so many great gems today with different cards to check out, especially for families who are just getting started with this. What would you say is your number one tip for people listening who are trying to get deeper into points and miles?
I think the first thing is one, you're going to hear a lot of different bloggers. You probably hear Julia. You'll hear me occasionally talk about different bonuses and stuff like that. don't succumb to the FOMO. There's always going to be another offer. There's always going to be another situation. Protect your credit and understand what your spending capacity is first, instead of chasing whatever the latest offer is. Because, like we said earlier, there are different bank rules that kind of prohibit you from getting access to different cards if you don't kind of do things in the kind of like the correct order. You may miss out on some opportunities later, like further down the road, because you've applied for too many different cards from too many other banks, and now Chase or whoever isn't going to open up the access to you just because you basically hit up all the other banks first, right? And so have a strategy and understand what you want to do first before you just kind of jump on whatever the new shiny object is.
Love that. Great advice. And speaking of great advice, can you give a shout out to somebody else on the internet who you would recommend listeners follow for even more points and miles tips?
Sure, absolutely. So my buddy Aaron Hurd, he's at cardsandpoints.com. I've known him for a few years. He writes a lot of content on his own site. He also writes a lot of content for a lot of really big brand names out there on the internet. And so you'll find his content in a lot of different spots out there.
Perfect. And where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. So I'm baldthoughts.com. So obviously got my Chrome Dome here. So look for me there. And then at Bald Thoughts on pretty much every social media channel out there.
When did you start that handle?
It was in 2012, and so my buddy David Esquire and I were out having, like, nachos in Newcastle's, getting ready to go watch a movie, and I was telling him I wanted to start a website, and we were just brainstorming ideas. I'm not gonna be one of those comb over guys. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna hide the fact that I have a bald head, and luckily, my wife loves my bald head. I just tell her I wish I had a choice in the matter, and so you just gotta kind of embrace it and go from there. And so I think about a lot of things: personal finance, travel, credit cards, loyalty programs. And so Bald Thoughts was formed almost 12 years ago.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for coming onto the podcast. It's been such a pleasure having you today. And thank you for sharing all of these wonderful ideas with us.
Absolutely. It was great seeing you. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me.